Hi, everyone. My name's Kevin Allison with the Marion County Soil and Water Conservation District in Indiana. I want to thank USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, Clean Water Indiana, and North Central Sayer for all your support. Today, we're going to look in depth on the Indiana Nutrient Management Tool and how it can be used on small farms and gardens. So let's get started. This is the Excel sheet. I'm going to show you where to find that. So I'm going to pop open my browser. marionswcd.org/soil health is the address for our soil health resources page. So you can scroll down. There's information on vegetables and cover crops. There's an Excel tool to help plan cover crops as well as mulching. But I want to draw your attention here to nutrient management. So we're going to click on that. Scroll down, and right here you can access the nutrient management tool. It also has a landing page, marionswcd.org/Indiana Nutrient Management Tool. So you're welcome to go to that directly. And here you'll see where you can grab the Indiana Nutrient Management Tool in the Excel version, or you can access it through Google Sheets. If you do Google Sheets, it will ask you to make a copy. Maybe the disclaimer there would be that cells aren't perfectly protected. It is a little bit more finicky to use than Excel spreadsheets, but it does work. And so also the other disclaimer is that if you're standing in front of 70 people at an organic conference trying to teach this tool and it breaks on you, it might be because the Excel version was pre-2021. So unfortunately, that's just a programming thing to make it work on both Excel and Google Sheets. A newer version of Excel is required to make that function correctly on Microsoft Excel. So my apologies, but we'll move on. And if you do happen to download and use this tool or just download it, please feel free to fill out this quick form about feedback. Also, if you see something that you like or would like me to improve in the tool, feel free to use that feedback form to contact us. Okay, back to the tool itself. So I've downloaded the Excel file. Here it is. The first page is basically disclaimers. So definitely read through all that. I'm not going to pick it word for word right now. But yeah, please do read through that. The next page is talks about the tabs, just shows what tabs are available in this tool. So you'll see along the bottom side that there's start, soil test, pH, nutrient calculator, crop data, amendments, compost, etc. So each of these tabs is a piece of this program that can be used to figure out the agronomics and nutrient management on your farm or garden. And we'll go through each one, so I'm not going to dwell too much here, but mainly just want to say that you get your soil test data from a lab. You take a test, you send it in, they give you an analysis back. This soil test tab is where you enter that data. Sometimes pH is very low in a garden or very high, so the pH tab helps us see if products could maybe help us increase or lower the pH to a target range that's more in our favor. The nutrient calculator tab lets us pick a specific crop, an area, in square feet. So let's say we're doing 150 square feet of carrots. We can put that in and we can work with that page to develop a product plan. Just a nutrient management plan with how much pounds and ounces of product might be needed to get that done. The crop data tab is kind of all the background data for that nutrient calculator, but it also is kind of displayed in a way that might be helpful just so you can see all crops at once. Amendments lets you customize or add fertilizers and cost information if you'd like. Price per area, you can kind of tease out how much it might cost to apply a certain product over a certain area. The compost tab, sometimes we apply compost and it could be whether it be a half an inch or a quarter inch or 3 cubic yards or 2 cubic feet. This compost tabs allows you to enter that data and kind of pull out what the nutrient contribution would be if we know the nutrient analysis of that compost test. So even if we don't have an analysis, that tab can still give us kind of data on how many wheelbarrow loads it might take to spread 3 cubic yards over said square feet. The manure tab is very similar to that, except it handles manure. So same idea, just different material. The tomatoes tab. So a lot of this crop data and calculations for this application are based on Michigan State guidance from a nutrient document of theirs, which is also a reference page on the last tab that has links to all these. But Purdue University asked me to look into using the New England Vegetable Guide's recommendations specifically for potassium in greenhouse tomatoes, because traditionally we find that the potassium requirements are a little bit higher than what is seen in that Michigan State document. The helpful area calculator, which is, I've got 3 beds. They're 2.5 feet wide by 50 feet long. That'll help us get the area if we don't already know that. So we can then use that area, put it back into the calculators to use. For the color coding, anywhere you see light blue is usually something that you can click on, and it's a drop down. White is where we can enter text or numbers, and then the light gray indicates an area, a cell that is auto-populated with like a formula. So that is usually something that is giving us the results. Nutrient management is just a piece of the pie in the garden, right? Just want to make sure that everybody's aware of soil health principles, and this tool does a lot with chemistry, but we can't forget about biology and physical structure of the soil. So minimize soil disturbance and try to maximize soil cover, roots, and biodiversity if you can. I'll leave it there. There's also some great info on, or at least an introduction to, the 4 R's of nutrient management. We want to apply nutrients at the right time, right place, from the right source, and the right rate. So this tool really helps with the right rate, I think, and also really source. There's some timing and placement things that this tool really doesn't dive into much, but we'll kind of pick at that as we go through examples. So do read this, read the background for crop nutrient recommendations. Basically, it says that the math for nutrient recommendations is kind of on the build up, maintenance, drawdown, exceeds philosophy. So that's just to say, and I'll show you a graph as I speak about this, but this graph basically says that if you have very high soil test levels, then we don't need to apply as much fertilizer. If we have very low soil test levels, for example, for phosphorus or potassium, it indicates that we would need to apply more fertilizer. The math in this tool is also based on yield. So it kind of the yield that we would expect from a crop. And so, when we harvest a carrot and eat it or sell it, then those nutrients are taken away from the soil system. That's kind of like a replace. We're replacing the nutrients that are taken, but this tool takes, and the Michigan State math takes that into account and makes fertilizer recommendations accordingly. This tool does do that math for you, so don't dwell on this too much, but it is helpful to kind of know the concepts. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and just mention credits. So the math says, we need 2 pounds per 1,000 square feet of nitrogen for X crop. We also kind of want to think about credits too. So what all is going into us meeting that goal? So organic matter is one of those things. Organic matter is a beautiful part of soil. In my garden, I've got like 6%. So 6% of my soil is organic matter. And because it's high, and because it's functioning biologically well, I feel comfortable about taking credits from soil organic matter. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this. I'd love to actually, throw in numbers where you can, just put in your soil organic matter level, and it gives you exact numbers. But really the guidance is that nitrogen is really finicky. And it can, after a rain, it might not be available. If it's cold, it might not be available. I can't really say, because you have this percent of nitrogen, then it's this much. Because you have this much percent of organic matter, it's this much nitrogen that you can expect, because it really is, it really is dependent on a lot of things. I don't like those parts of education when there's not a silver bullet, but. So nutrient credits from Compost. This is the background math for the Compost tab, and I think I'll just kind of leave this here for now and get a little bit more in depth of that when we're actually looking at the tool. But it kind of depends on the percent of nitrogen in that material to tease out how available it is. The nutrients from compost are going to be the first year, second year, and third year. A lot of the research is based on tilled in compost. If you're out there doing research on kind of no-till compost mulch applications, please hit me up. I'd love to hear about like numbers and what you guys are seeing. Um, so yeah, this is just kind of assumes tilled in and assumes that we know the percentage of nitrogen in that compost, which can be done through compost analysis. Same thing for manure. Those are based on Purdue Extension math, and I think that manure tab will be really helpful for folks applying manure. And then cover crops. So there's ways of I guess I love growing like hairy vetch and crimson clover and legumes, overwintering legumes, and mowing them down, weed whacking them in the spring, tarping them for a few weeks, untarping and planting a crop that likes nitrogen. So my brassicas or sweet corn, because those legumes and the nitrogen fixing bacteria that dwell on their roots are making nitrogen. And as that legume dies, that nitrogen gets released, and that crop can take some of that, uptake some of that. So it's kind of like creating nitrogen out of thin air in a sense. And I think it's a great kind of agronomic and conservation tool that we've got in our toolbox. Just study these two graphs. Like this isn't perfect. And this research was probably done out west too, so if you're in the Midwest, like soils, climate, everything's different. Like, so yeah, just take it with a grain of salt. But I did want to put these in there because it does kind of give an indication on what nitrogen does do after a cover crop. So if you've got a sole legume cover crop by itself and you're letting it reach flower stage, which is close to getting to optimal nitrogen production, and you kill it then it might have a higher pounds per acre, pounds per 1,000 square feet nitrogen release than you would if you would have terminated that legume cover crop, let's say in March or April. So allowing the legume to reach further flower is going to increase nitrogen production. And then on the other hand, if you grow like cereal rye, and you wait until it gets like really, really tall, 5 feet tall, and then you crimp it down or mow it down, it's actually could draw down nitrogen. So you might even have a debit or a negative nitrogen reaction with that cover crop. So, and then a blend might set you, in the middle. So probably the best way to get at this is to take cuttings, and I think there's a link. Just type in Sayer cover crop biomass, how many nitrogen, and you'll get at it. But I think these two graphs kind of just help think through it initially. And I think that's all on this. Another technology disclaimer, but that is the front page. Please do read through it, and let's move on. Okay, soil tests. So this is the soil test tab where you put in your soil test data. This is straight from a lab. You can see my 2025 soil test results, my 2024 soil test results. And I break my garden up into 5 testing areas. It's a fairly small garden. It's like 2,000 square feet. So I probably wouldn't need so many areas, but, I'm kind of just really studying, what affects what. So I do break it up pretty specifically into about 2 or 3 beds a piece. So these are, again, straight from the lab. You got soil organic matter, pH. If my soil pH was low, it might actually give me a buffer pH. These soil pHs are, 7, close to 7 or above. So it's not showing me a buffer pH. And then there's cation exchange capacity, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, etc. But the idea is to put the numbers in. This tool mainly deals with phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen. We've got records for all the calcium and magnesium, but the power of the calculations is NPK. So usually a soil test will come back and it will have under phosphorus and potassium what type of soil test it was. So excuse me, some soil tests come back and it says Bray. This tool actually needs Malic 3 to function. So M3, Malic 3. Some soil test results might be provided in that already. If they're not, if they're in Bray, and if they don't say, feel free to call your lab and sort that out. But oftentimes they will say. But let's say we get a Bray phosphorus back in parts per million, and it's like 150. I'll put that in, and then the Malic 3 is 203. So instead of putting 150 here in my phosphorus, I'm going to put 203. Let's say the potassium was 170. I'm going to put in 194. So this is just a quick conversion that will allow you to switch between Bray and Malic 3 parts per million. If it comes back in pounds per acre, so let's say it's like 30 pounds per acre, first switch that to parts per million, and then use that parts per million to put in there. If it's in Bray P pounds per acre, start at pounds per acre, convert to parts per million, take the parts per million, and get it to Malic 3 parts per million. That's a mouthful. Let's leave this page and move on to the pH tab. And this top just lets you view records. So you can see that in 2025 versus 2024, my pH went up. I think that's because of compost applications. So I use compost as mulch, and I think that raised the pH. It actually did it fairly quickly. So you could see on my soil test tab that my organic matter also went up, which is awesome. But I do want to be cognizant that, there is a optimal pH range for crops. And I think that 7.5 is getting a little high. So, this just lets me look at several different soil tests together, especially since pH seems to be like similar across all my plots. So, I can look at the pH, realize that it's all high for all these beds, and then kind of just, I'm going to be applying a product to lower that pH, and I just want to do it to the whole area. This kind of just lets you view records of what you want to manage. Okay, so I'm at 7.5. What's my target? I'm going to dip down below these tables a bit and show you that there are best practices. This page 2 on this pH tab is important to read. It says what the optimal range is for most crops. You can dig in a little bit more if you want pH values for specific vegetables, but 6.5 to 7 for most vegetable crops. And so I'm at 7.5. I want to lower that. This also talks about using, sulfur to lower pH, and it talks about using limestone to increase pH. And it also gives some really, really important limits, agronomic limits. So many agronomists recommended limiting sulfur applications to 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet per year. Consider applying 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet twice per year, especially in no-till or reduced-till situations. So we just don't want to see a really, a really concentrated, sulfur application all at once. Okay, so I'm going to go up. My soil type is silt loam. You also have options of clay and sandy. So you'll notice that I'm using the left side of this table. If I were needing to increase my pH, I would be using the right side. So I'm silt loam over here. My soil test pH on average is about 7.5. You can see up here, 7.5, 7.6. This doesn't auto-populate from the top. This is more just a view, and this is more just to calculate down here. So 7.5, and my target pH, it's going to allow me to choose one of these. So I'm going to choose 6.5. And it then produces how many pounds per 1,000 square feet of sulfur is needed to lower the pH from 7.5 to 6.5. So I know that I need 20 pounds of sulfur based on the guidance below this table. So best practices, it talks about application limits. And for sulfur, I'm in a no-till situation. So it says to consider applying 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet in a single application rather than 10 pounds. So I'm going to apply that twice a year until I reach that 20-pound mark. So I'm going to be managing the whole garden at once because the pHs are similar. I need sulfur to do that. So this will I'll actually do my total here. I've got a 2,000 square foot garden. This is mostly just record keeping here. Nope, not looking for pH, but my pH target. And my total is 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So for my 2,000 square foot garden, it looks like I will be needing 40 pounds of sulfur total. So again, let's break that down into, let's say, spring of 26. I'm going to do that whole garden. I'm just going to do 5 pounds. And then let's say September 26, 2026, I'll do another 5. Spring 27, fall 27. Kind of see how I can build this out. So a little cumbersome, but it's a way of keeping records and a way of just making sure we're splitting up our inputs. So, here I've got 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. I'm getting that 20 pounds total. So then I would retest the soil to make sure the pH is correcting. If I am like putting on, you know, compost additions in 28, like maybe I should just go ahead and plan on doing another 5 because um, I know that my compost that I'm using is does have a high pH. So just kind of factor that into your thinking too. Do retest, and yeah, this is a way to fill out and kind of keep a record and a plan. So if you are increasing, have the need to increase soil pH with limestone, we're going to be looking at this top right table here. So you would choose your buffer pH. So from the soil test, instead of choosing the pH, you're going to choose the buffer pH. So let's say we are low down here, 6.3, and our target is more like 6.5. So we're going to click here, just a little bit of change that we need to make. We also want to put the incorporation depth. So this is how many inches that you will be potentially tilling in that or incorporating that limestone into the soil. For a no-till soil or reduced till under 3 inches, just go ahead and choose 3 or 4. So I'm going to choose 3, and it's going to tell me the pounds per 1,000 square feet of lime needed to make that adjustment. So again, can't repeat this enough. Read this best practices section, this one for limestone, and it will talk about application limits and also what kind of lime you might want to choose based on some of those other factors like cation exchange capacity and how much calcium, magnesium you have in the soil already. So do read those and make your decisions accordingly. Okay, moving on to the nutrient calculator tab. So this is where you can start to choose your crop, your soil test type, areas, and produce a product plan. We're looking at nutrient budget here, and then the credits that we're using to achieve that nutrient budget. So our crop nutrient goal will end up populating with pounds per 1,000 square feet of required nutrients to achieve good yield. And then the total nutrient credits will be populated based on how much soil organic matter we're taking credit for, compost, manure, cover crops, etc., and also fertilizers and amendments below that we can choose. So one of the first steps here is to choose the crop. There's lots of crop options. To be honest with you, I wish I had even more. I wish there were flowers and lawn and all the things. As I can update those, I will. But currently, it is has many of the commonly grown vegetables in Indiana and Michigan. Let's do beets, for example. Where are we planting those beets? This is where you choose your soil test area. So those soil tests that were in that soil test tab, we can look at. Let's say I'm planting it in A4 and A5, and this is kind of why I like to add dates to my, at least years to my soil test results. So I just went back to the soil test tab. You can see that these are 2025 and 2024. That way, when I'm in the nutrient calculator and I'm choosing a soil test, I know what year it's from, so I can choose the most current. So I'm planting that in bed A4, for example. My beds are 70 square feet, actually 75. Yeah, so this is trying to make a fertility plan for these beets based on this soil test. And immediately, the first thing it's telling me, I'm going to maybe zoom in so we can see it a little better. It immediately is telling me that my phosphorus and potassium levels for this crop based on the soil test exceed. So the P and K are high enough that it's telling me that I don't need to add any fertilizer for in terms of phosphorus and potassium for these beets. It pulls up the soil test results for the one I chose, A4 and A5 from 2025, which can also help you make decisions. But that then takes this information and loads up your crop nutrient goal. So you can see that the crop nutrient goal is 2.3 for nitrogen, 0 for phosphorus, and 0 for potassium. Those zeros are zeros because the soil test exceeds those limits. So really, in this sense, we're looking just at supplying nitrogen to feed this crop. Again, this tool is not quite ready to handle micronutrients. They're finicky. They can be toxic if you overapply. So just contact an agronomist. Look at extension documents about certain products and micronutrient deficiencies and all the things. Just yeah, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of good information out there, but this tool can't quite do that just yet. So let's focus on the NPK, which are also pretty super important for growing crops. Here you'll see the soil organic matter credits. So this is your list of credits that you can try to build to work towards getting this 2.3 pounds per 1,000 square feet accomplished. So let's say, I'm just going to put in a number here. I know that I'd love to say, more about soil organic matter and the nitrogen credit, but it's cooler. It's cooler right now. I'm like fertilizing beets, for example. There's not a lot of mineralization of the soil happening. So I'm kind of using on the low end of my range of what I would do. But again, don't take that as a recommendation, but just using this as an example. We're going to leave compost blank for now, manure blank, cover crop blank, and previous crop blank for now. Okay, so we know that with our soil organic matter, we are 0.2 pounds per 1,000 square feet, but we're still a little bit away from getting to that 2.3 pounds to meet the crop nutrient needs. So we can start choosing fertilizers to help us get there. This is going to pull up, this drop down here is going to pull up a list of fertilizers. It's got several in there. You can add more if you need, and I'll show you that when we get to the amendments tab. But for now, let's just choose one, and we'll say that we'll use feather meal. It's a good nitrogen source, right? So immediately it tells me that feather meal is 12% nitrogen, 0.35% K2O, potassium, 0.4 sulfur, and 0.6 calcium. And it doesn't look like it has any phosphorus. Because I don't need any phosphorus, I'm okay with that, right? Like it's a good, just even to not over apply nutrients. It's a good practice to use this low P fertilizer or no P fertilizer. So we've got feather meal here. You can say it says 0 pounds, 0 ounces. That's the amount of product that we're going to apply over 75 square feet. Okay. And it's 0 right now because we haven't put in a rate. So I'm going to start doing, the first one's kind of a guess, but I'm going to put in 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet of feather meal. So we put on 10 pounds. We know that 12% of that is nitrogen, of that material is nitrogen. So we are seeing a 1.2 pound credit per se towards our nutrient goal. Okay, so you can see we're still not there. So our total nutrient needs are at 1.4 and we're looking at 2.3. So we're going to increase that to 15. We're getting closer. We're a little high, backing it down. There we go. So 17 pounds per 1,000 square feet of feather meal, or 1 pound per 5 ounces, will start getting me close to that nutrient goal. So you can see that if I were to change the square feet to, let's say we just got a big old garden of beets, 1,500 square feet of beets, that's going to be 25 pounds and 9 ounces. So the pounds per 1,000 square feet always stays the same. It's our constant, and we're looking at that much fertilizer. So 25 pounds and 9 ounces. So you can start seeing where, soil organic matter, compost can help, reach those goals. But then your compost is going to have a lot of phosphorus in it, and those are going to start going up. So when you don't necessarily need them. So, that's just the nature of the game, I think. So I'm going to delete that. You can split fertilizers. Let's say I could do 10 ounces or 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet of blood meal, which is another nitrogen fertilizer, and 10 of, you can also just type and get there, feather meal. I'm high, so I'm going to bring down one of them. Some people do blends of these, is why I'm doing this. But yeah, you can tease out and get exactly where you need to be. So this is, I could weigh this out, I could measure this out, and I could apply it to that bed. Cost we'll get to in a sec. So there's your credits from those fertilizers and amendments, totaling these two products currently. And these are your total nutrient credits towards your crop nutrient goal. Okay. We might go back and play with that one more time. But the crop data, we want to get through all these tabs first. Crop data is based on that soil test area ID that you chose in Nutrient Calculator. So this is the spot to choose the soil test that we're looking at. back here on the nutrient calculator tab. So it fills this in and runs. Yeah, just this is kind of the background data for the calculations that happen there on the nutrient calculator tab. So it's got all these crops. It tells you what the nitrogen, this is the where it pulls the nitrogen recommendation from. I don't think I mentioned earlier, but nitrogen is usually based off of a table, and not necessarily the soil test. So Michigan State's got a table with, it says beets, and this is how much nitrogen traditionally should be applied to it. And it also gives maintenance-based P2O5 and K2O levels, so phosphorus and potassium recommendations if you were just focusing on crop removal. But since we can take soil test into account, this soil test is reading that it exceeds in phosphorus and exceeds in potassium for these crops. Some crops are outliers, but for this one, it looks to be all the same. Yeah, some crops just might require that much more phosphorus than others, for example, but in general, they're usually fairly similar. So phosphorus, potassium exceeds, and the soil test based results are 0 and 0. So that's kind of where that nutrient calculator is pulling from. I also mentioned earlier that it does take yield into account. These yield data is entered in pounds per 1,000 square feet. You can change them. So I'm going to even add numbers there. And once I add yield data, it lets me start getting phosphorus and potassium numbers, like output. So if you're back here in the nutrient calculator tab and you type asparagus in here or pull up asparagus and it doesn't give you any recommendations, it's because I didn't put in crop active yield data for that crop. I just used what I had available to me that I felt like I was comfortable with. Those were yield data from Crop Rotations on Organic Farms from Sayer's book. So currently, I've just copied, this is actually the table with those numbers, and I've copied what I wanted over into active yield data to be the default. If you're working in pounds per acre for your yield data, you would want to change this, but you would also want to change all these numbers accordingly, right? You would want to change that to 6,000 because this is now telling the calculator that your yield is only 138 pounds per acre, when actually it's probably 138 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Let's say your beet yield is more like 600 pounds per 1,000 square feet. You can start keeping records here. So I would love to see, and then if you actually wanted to use that in the calculator, you would want to change, this number over here to 600. Oops, that is 600. I think it would be cool to, just to maybe get like groups of growers or to, submit, send me common yield data, and it'd be cool to have some columns here for, intense, 6-row carrot kind of thing, to kind of just have a note there so we can, maybe people have more access to more realistic yield data to what market farmers and more intensive gardeners are using these days. So yeah, let's move on to the next tab, which is amendments. So in the nutrient tab, I pulled up a drop down of amendments and fertilizers to use, and that comes from here. So you can edit these. These are just some default ones that I found. Do check me on this. Like if you get a bag of fertilizer and it's different than this, like you're going to want to update your analysis accordingly, or add a custom. So like, let's say, this is like feather meal, Kevin, right, in 2026, and it actually came in as like instead of a 1200, it was like a 13, a 1300. That's not a big mistake, but if there's something, something really different, then consider that for sure. I'm just going to change that back to custom. Oops. Cool. Yeah. So, this is a quick way to see what common analyses for different amendments and fertilizers. Some don't have any phosphorus, but they give great K2O, so something that would be used if tomatoes needed potassium, like we might go towards potash. I don't have designated which one's organic and which ones aren't. My apologies, but it's just, things change, and I don't want this tool to not reflect something that's current. So please do your homework, talk to your certifier about that. So if you want to start using cost as a part of this tool, you can say, okay, I bought a bag of product. Let's say it's feather meal. It was, let's say it was 25 pounds for $35. This is just off the top of my head, not even sure it's true. But so now I know it's $1.40 per pound. I'm going to find feather meal here and say $1.40. Okay. So now when I go back to use this tool, nutrient calculator, and I put in feather meal, like I now know that I'm doing $13.30 per 1,000 square feet is how much feather meal that is, or per area, $19.95 for, that must be the big beet garden. Yeah, for 1,500 square feet. So if you did, if you're using organic fertilizer for 5,000 square feet, you can start to see it's going up. So just might help us make decisions. So back to, I think that's all I want to show you on the amendments tab. This is the compost tab, and I really like this one too. It's a way to get at nutrient contribution from compost, but it also, I think, is a handy tool in terms of just material management, in terms of knowing how much might be needed. And so, type of compost, let's just say, okay, source, we can just say, wherever, the trees. Data sample, if we have a compost sample, and I'll show you where that does help if we really want to get the most out of this tool. Read these things. I should probably be reading them now, but I don't want to just read. But I think most of this just says required data for estimated nutrient contribution is compost weight, so pounds per cubic foot, which we can estimate or weigh, and percent moisture of compost, which comes from a compost analysis, and then the nutrient analysis of the compost. So let's put in those things. Let's say we got a compost test back, and it said that the percent moisture was 47. That is actually on the test. And then it said that the nitrogen was 0.8, the phosphorus was 1.15, and the K was, say, 1. Okay, so percentage, dry weight, you'll see that on the compost test. If you didn't have a compost test and you really needed to use this tool to get some just estimates, I guess, then I would potentially look at this reference table. But again, the ranges are so big, 1 to 2.5, that I would have a hard time accounting for, if I'm really doing math and using the calculator to get math, that's a pretty wide variance to see. So in terms of it potentially doubling or halving the actual numbers. So get a compost test if you can. There's also some depth and inches conversion, just because sometimes, we're applying certain depths of compost, and I don't know. It's there if you need it. So let's use this thing. This is where we put in what we're applying. So compost application rate, amount per area. There's lots of input variations. So you can think in cubic feet, you can think in cubic yards, inches, tons per acre, pounds, gallons, and loads. So all those are options. Let's say we do half an inch, 0.5 inches. And let's still think with my 75 square foot bed. It's going to tell me how many cubic feet, cubic yards, tons per acre, pounds, and gallons. To get it to do that, we do need to put in a pounds per cubic foot. So I would recommend weighing a 5-gallon bucket full of your material, and then using this little conversion compost density tool and saying, my 5-gallon bucket weighed 30 pounds or 25 pounds, right? So then we can know that the pounds per cubic foot density is 37.4. It's just an extra step that we got to take, because density does have, something to do with the calculations when you're talking in, tons per acre and pounds, and trying to get nutrient contribution of the actual material. In general, leaf compost is 25 pounds per cubic foot, and compost manure might be more like 45. But again, weigh it to really know. So on the right here, this compost analysis, that doesn't play into the math of this sheet, but it is helpful to keep records. So if you're printing this out, you might see something like that. Like, this is almost all organic matter. The pH is high, which is on that compost test, which is why I lean towards applying sulfur when I'm doing the compost, and then the seed in ratio. So it's really high. I'm expecting it to be more chunky. The seed in ratio being high is more like a chunky compost, whereas the lower seed in ratio is going to just decompose and be probably more readily available to contribute nutrients. Okay, so this is populated now. So we've got, half an inch over 75 square feet, and it's telling us that that's 3.1 cubic yards, zero point 0.1 yards, this many tons per acre, pounds and gallons. Okay, and since we have the NPK, percent nutrient, then it is also able to tell us what estimated available nutrients are in that year. So you're actually seeing down here that it's in year 1 for nitrogen for this amount of compost over this many square feet is 0. And that's because our nitrogen is lower than 1%. So if we were to change that to 1.5%, just the math behind the compost contribution, there's ranges. And so it's this 1.5% is in a range that 5% is available the first year, 2.5% year 2, and 1.3% year 3. So it kind of keeps halving over a few years. If you go up to really higher percentage compost, it's going to tell you that even 10% might be available. And you can see this year 1 total pounds per 1,000 square feet start to go up because more of that compost is more readily available nitrogen. So if you are exceeding 3, it's not going to tell you anything because we don't expect that that's a compost anymore. It's probably more of a manure and should be handled with the manure tab. So we're going to bring that down to, let's say 1. And so now I know that, 0.4 pounds of 1,000 square feet could be taken into maybe a credit for year 1. I will say that that's a tilled in compost, right? That the math assumes that. So I am not maybe super comfortable with taking all that in year 1. So I could come back here to the nutrient calculator, and I know this is just kind of it's not a direct mathematical decision. It's more of just a gut feeling, but there was 0.4. I'm going to say like maybe 0.2, 0.1 might be available. So that is a way of kind of developing credits. And then, I can reduce this now that it's 6.5. So I can start reducing my fertilizer because I've got some credit. If I was tilling that in, maybe I would be a little bit more comfortable with taking that. So just some of those agronomical decisions that aren't necessarily cut and dry sometimes. Okay, so maybe an FYI for you folks thinking in bigger farms, you can click pounds per acre, and it will tell you that in pounds per acre if you want to, if you're managing a larger space. That being said, you can also think in, putting on 1 ton of acre of compost over, you could say, well, let's just say 1 square foot, and we can change that to acres. So 1 ton of acre, and you're doing 1 acre, or you're doing 2 acres, or you're doing 3 acres, now you need 6,000 pounds of material, this many cubic feet. So you can tease out a lot of different ways of thinking about applications. Sometimes like you could say like even cubic yard, like I'm getting 3 cubic yards for my 2,000 square foot garden. Like how much will that actually be? And you can see that it's about half an inch. So 0.49, just about half an inch of application. So that maybe even might help you think like, how much do I need to purchase? So, if you say, you want to do, 2 inches of compost, and you got a, 10,000 square foot garden, you're looking at 61 yards. It's a big garden to be putting 2 inches of compost over. So that's a good way of seeing those numbers. The load information, this is for like buckets and wheelbarrows. So let's not scare small gardeners like myself and be thinking about 70 yards of material to move. But to 2,000 square feet, we're back down, like that's still 2 inches, 12 yards. Now let's say I've got a 5-gallon bucket. That's going to be still 500 5-gallon buckets to move that material. So let's get a bigger wheelbarrow maybe. So now I need 33 loads to move that amount of material. So, or if I had like a smaller wheelbarrow, like I'll need more loads. So Yeah, that's also just a maybe good way of picking at like how much labor it might take to get that done. Okay, the manure tab. This is based off of Purdue AY 277 mathematics. And so a good step is to start with the manure type. So we can go down and choose a host of options. Let's say poultry, solid with litter. And then you're going to want to look at the manure analysis and see. I'm not actually looking at manure analysis, so I'm guessing. That's not what I'm telling you to do. um, yeah, get your manure tested before applying it. So manure analysis units. So if you're, if it was liquid manure, the test will probably be in pounds per 1,000 gallons. If it's solid, a lot of the analysis that comes back is in pounds per ton. So we'll pick pounds per ton. It's a solid. It's actually on the the manure test, and then you're going to want to put in the organic nitrogen. So 40, and this is coming straight from that test. It populates a mineralization factor based on that poultry solid with litter. Then you're going to want to look at your phosphorus and potassium from the soil test. And you can pick either pounds per 1,000 square feet or pounds per acre as your nutrient contribution unit. It's not giving me anything because I haven't put anything on. So let's put on cubic feet. Let's put on 3 cubic feet over 500 square feet. Okay. Before populating these available nutrients, you do need pounds per cubic foot. So again, the weighing is critical. Again, there's another place you can make that weighing conversion. If you got a 5-gallon bucket, let's just say it's 40 pounds, and then we can put it in our square feet, and it's going to tell us how many pounds per 1,000 square feet of NPK is available. So you can also put it into pounds per 1,000 square or pounds per acre. Back to pounds per 1,000 square feet. Yeah. So just a helpful way to get at estimated available nutrients in manure. Do look at this though, because this is 1.8, 3.5, and 2.9. I'm going to go back to the nutrient calculator. What if I were to put phosphorus like credits in, right? You can start seeing that I am way over the zero that was recommended for these beets in this garden. So if you don't need like phosphorus and potassium, it might be best to use a non-manure based source. Let's also look at the compost tab in regards to phosphorus. Even though the material might not be animal based, manure based, and it's plant based, we can still get a lot of phosphorus when we're putting on an increased amount of material. So let's just look at that in numbers. Let's say we put on 1 inch on our 5,000 square foot beet plot, and with the compost analysis from the compost test, it is now showing me that I would be putting on 2.3 pounds of phosphorus per 1,000 square feet in year one. So for those of you that think in pounds per acre, it's over 500 pounds per acre. So it's a lot. So 12.3. If I were to go back to the nutrient management tab and just take a look at this, that's a 12.3 credit for my beet plot when I only need 0, right? So based on the soil test exceeding in phosphorus, it's telling me that I need 0 pounds. And if I were to do a compost application like this, it would be way over applying phosphorus. So please consider that in your nutrient budget, and especially if you're near water, because these excess nutrients can cause effect on water quality. So keep that in mind and onward. I mentioned this tab earlier. It is where you can get maybe a little bit more precise recommendation for potassium in greenhouse and high tunnel tomatoes. So it's not perfect, but basically you pick your soil test. The laboratory, there's only a couple labs that were done in a study where that conversion was made, like a conversion test to see if we could switch between Malic 3, and like Morgan. And that basically means that, the Northeastern labs, like New England, where these potassium recommendations come from, have use Morgan, like an extraction method to get at potassium, whereas we here in the Midwest often use something else. So this was just a test to see if that conversion is able to be done. It's not perfect, but let's just say that um, our yield is medium and our unit recommendation is pounds per 1,000 square feet. It's going to give us a new potassium recommendation. I'm going to go back to the nutrient calculator tab here, where I've chosen fresh market tomatoes on the same soil test area that I was using for the tomatoes tab. And it does say exceed, and it's giving me a 0 pound per 1,000 square feet recommendation for K2O. But based on the tomato tab, I'm going to make that 6.9 pounds per acre. So I'm just going to do that in my notes section. So based on New England guide tomato tab, new K2O goal is 6.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So unfortunately, it doesn't auto-populate this up here. These will be based on the Michigan State recommendations, but so this might be the best place to put that note. So now that I know I need 6.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet of K2O, I can start looking to build those credits, and I'm going to do that by choosing a high potassium fertilizer. So here's a 0060, NPK. So that third number is the potassium. And I'm going to begin to first guess kind of like how much pounds per 1,000 square feet, and I was close. So this is giving me the 60%. Potash is 60% in this case, 60% potassium. So it is giving me 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet is providing 6.0 pounds per 1,000 square feet of potassium. So I need to bump that up just a little bit, bump it down just a little bit. And there we go. So 11.5 pounds per 1,000 square feet. I know that I need to apply 11 pounds and 8 ounces per this 1,000 square feet of fresh market tomatoes in a high tunnel. So that will get you there. If you do need to do split applications, some folks will do some of that early on and some of that later, and a lot of that depends on when the crop needs it. So again, check those extension documents, the Midwest Vegetable Guide, just to consult agronomists, other growers to get a feel for those things. But you could, if you were to split that out, you could say that this one is going to be later in the season, right? Maybe we do, just an example of how to split that out. So these two applications will ultimately get us 6.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet, but they're split between two applications. So back on the web, there's some resources at the soil health page, and one of them under vegetables is the Midwest Vegetable Production Guide. Click on that, and I've got a bookmark too, but you can come down and lots of topics, good stuff, good reads, and there's also a list of crops. So we'll take garlic, for example. Onions and related crops is the closest that it looks to. So I'm gonna click there, and it actually starts out with the description and a little fertilizing section. So there's a lot of good stuff to consider in these. So this says before planting, apply 25 pounds of N per acre. We can use the tool to convert that to pounds per 1,000 square feet if need be. Up to 150 pounds P2O5 phosphorus per acre, and up to 100 pounds K2O per acre based on soil test results. And we just discussed how the calculator takes soil test results and justifies lowering those or putting them where they need to be in terms of actual pounds per acre applied. So a lot of times you were seeing 0 and 0 on mine. So I'm just worrying about that nitrogen. So the calculator is taking Michigan State nitrogen recommendations totals. So for like, let's say X crop, it's 100 pounds per acre. So this Vegetable guide actually, gives a little bit more indication about before planting, about timing, right? Before planting, apply 25 pounds of N per acre, and then side dress in 20 to 40 pound increments in the spring. So that there's some detail there, and then you got to think too, like, okay, like if I've got garlic that's got mulch on top of it, right, like straw, for example, like how am I gonna get that fertilizer like into the soil? So it might be choosing a fertilizer that falls through um, the mulch a little bit easier than another fertilizer. Oftentimes, I'll look for additional documents to help me make through those timing decisions. In particular, well, here's an oftentimes, I will look towards additional documents, resources, especially from Extension, to help me kind of inform my timing decisions and even amount decisions. So here's just an example about garlic. Michigan State University has an organic garlic production guide, E3371. That's going to help me make some more decisions about this crop. So this organic garlic production guide can help us think through fertilization a little bit more. It's got a lot of great stuff in it, but I'm going to scroll down to where it speaks of fertilization and nitrogen. So garlic responds well to increased nitrogen fertilization. Recommended rates are 125 to 150 pounds per acre of applied nitrogen, which we can convert to pounds per 1,000 square feet with our calculator. And then it goes on to say that it's best applied at planting, 75% of total, and in the spring at 6 inches of growth, 25% total of the total nitrogen. It's best to apply slow release forms of nitrogen in the fall, but apply quick release forms in the spring. So I'm going to use this to inform the way I make my plan for garlic. It's a little bit different than the Midwest Vegetable Guide recommendations. Since I'm using organic fertilizers, I might, in this instance, I'm going to lean towards this Michigan State document to help inform me. So back at my management tool here, I'm going to select garlic, and let's do it on soil test C1, 2, and 3. I think that's where I'm putting my garlic. 250 square feet. And so this is actually telling me that for this soil test type and garlic, that my phosphorus is in the maintenance zone. So it's no longer exceeds. It's where maintenance is basically what I'm harvesting, I need to put back, and it's going to automatically tell me what that phosphorus number is. So it did give me a 0.5 pounds per 1,000 square feet recommendation of phosphorus. So instead of the 0 that we've been seeing. So let's just kind of dig in on nitrogen though. Okay, so the tool is telling me that I need 2.8 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. I'm just going to do a quick comparison to see how that measures up to the other documents that we've been looking at. So since they were thinking in pounds per acre, I'm just going to put this in here. 2.8 pounds per 1,000 square feet is actually 122 pounds per acre. So very similar to the totals that both of those documents were giving me. So, this is just a good place to say, just to see those conversions if you ever need them. So if somebody gives you a recommendation in pounds per acre, you can quickly convert it and vice versa. So 2.8 pounds is what we're going to go with the nitrogen. I'm going to put it into my calculator on my phone here. And so actually it's 2.8 total in pounds per 1,000 square feet. You can hit Alt Enter in these boxes to keep on typing on the line below. It's just a little Excel trick. And in my calculator on my phone, I saw that 75%, so 0.75 times 2.8 is 2.1 pounds per 1,000 square feet in fall. And the other 25% is 0.7 pounds per 1,000 square feet in spring at 6 inches of growth. Okay, and I want to use rapid fertilizer. Okay, so that's just a way of dividing up that nitrogen into 75% at planting and the 0.7 pounds in the spring. In the fall, I'm going to use a little bit slower release fertilizer as suggested by the Michigan State document, and in the spring, I'm going to use a little bit quicker fertilizer, which is good nitrogen source of blood meal. So blood meal's just got a little bit quicker release than feather meal. So my goal is to get 2.1 pounds in the spring, 2.1 pounds per 1,000 square feet of nitrogen. So my rate per 1,000 square feet of the actual product is what I'm adjusting here. So I need to know I need to do 17.5 will get me to that 2.1 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So in the fall, I'm going to put 4 pounds and 6 ounces of feather meal over this 250 square foot plot of garlic. And in the spring, again, it's a little bit of a guessing game to get there, but I think as you go, you'll get a little bit more accustomed to guessing right. Maybe. All right, there we go. So in the spring, I'm going to put on 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet, or 1 pound and 4 ounces per that 250 square feet area to get my 0.7 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So yeah, this is a good way of pushing out those of that nitrogen for that crop. Now I do see that I've got 0.5 pounds to go on phosphorus. However, I do know that I've been using compost on this bed, and that I'm going to put more compost mulch on the bed as I plant this garlic. So I'm fairly comfortable with the phosphorus that I'm getting out of that. But I go back to the compost tab, and let's say I even put just a 1/10 of an inch over that 250 square feet. I already know that I'm, getting, 1.2 pounds of phosphorus. So that's already over my limit, really. And just want to take that into consideration. So that is how to develop my garlic plan. And yeah, I'll just make a note that this is, just make notes and print it out and have it ready. And you should be good to go when the garlic comes. Okay, so I'm back at the start page. I wanted to go over nutrient credits from cover crops and give an example of how that might be used for, let's say, sweet corn. So this isn't perfect. These are two really good graphs, though, that help think through the concepts. And they were probably done out west, so we're in different soils and climates and whatnot. But I think they are great graphs to just help us think through the concepts. So with that, like if you plant a total 100% legume cover crop, you can see that this graph as it goes towards maturity, so March, April, May, June, as it goes towards maturity and reaching that flower stage, it's actually producing more nitrogen through the nitrogen fixation that it's doing with the bacteria that dwell on its root nodules. So if you were to plant a cereal rye, for example, and let it get like 5 feet tall and terminate it in late May, early June, it might actually have uptaken a lot of nitrogen. And would then result in a debit. So not necessarily a credit, but it would be a negative in towards our nutrient goal. So there's a lot to consider there. Like if you had a balanced mix and you terminated it early, it might not be doing much in the way of adding or subtracting from that. So the best case scenario is that you take a biomass sample, send it off to a lab, and get an analysis, and recommendations back that let you know how many pounds per acre or pounds per 1,000 square feet you could account for. But these graphs are a quick way at getting at the concepts. So the one on the right too, I think is nice because it shows that most of the nitrogen in the legume, like hairy vetch in this example, is actually in the top growth, and it's released within the first maybe 5 weeks. So a lot of that nitrogen is released within the first 5 weeks. So I think that's just a helpful way of informing me on how to manage those cover crops and account for the nitrogen. So, but again, like there's lots of variations, like, okay, I've mowed this hairy vetch down, I've tarped it for a few weeks, is the nitrogen still there? Like a lot of questions that I think, more and more research could help us get at. So, in general though, let's say before this sweet corn, I've done a hairy vetch and crimson clover legumes mix, right? And I've terminated it a little bit before flower stage. So, maybe I'm looking at 40 to 50 pounds of nitrogen for that credit. So I'm going to go back to my nutrient calculator here, and I'm curious what 40 to 50 pounds is in 1,000 square feet. This is from the old garlic one, so I'm going to delete that note. But 40 pounds per acre is 0.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So let's take that as a credit. So my nitrogen credit is 0.9. So you can already see that my nutrient credits are 0.9 per thousand square feet. So if we're going sweet corn, I'm going to come up here to crop sweet corn. The soil test area, I believe, is B3, B4, B5. Okay, so it's giving me different indicators on my soil test levels. It says I just need a tad bit of potassium because it's a little bit lower. The potassium is a little bit lower on this soil test than other areas. So let's concentrate on the nitrogen though. So 2.8 pounds is the total that I need. I've already got 0.9 from that cover crop. So I need to use a fertilizer, or I'm going to use a fertilizer to get at the rest of it. So let's say feather meal, 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet. I need to bring that down. 16, 15.5. There we go. So 15.5 pounds per 1,000 square feet will give me 1.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet, which is what is needed between the cover crop and the fertilizer to reach that nutrient goal. So if I were to put the square foot of this plot, let's say we're doing 1,000 square feet of sweet corn, it's going to tell me that I need 15 pounds and 8 ounces of that feather meal to get that done. So, there's the cost because in the amendments tab, I've entered in the cost per pound of feather meal for this example, mainly just to show you how cover crops can save you a bit on that nitrogen. So let's say we didn't have that 0.9 credit, I'm going to drop that. So we're looking at $21 to do this area right now. So I'm going to remove that credit. And because I've removed the credit, I might need more fertilizer. So I'm going to need to bump that up. 20, let's try 23. There we go. So 23 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So, I've added some more money to the need there because I didn't plant that cover crop and I'm not expecting nitrogen from it. So let's plant that cover crop and bring it back down, right? So there we go, 15.5. And that's just a good way of incorporating that credit into your plan. So again, soil organic matter, it's a tricky one, but let's do say it's warm. I've got grid biology. I'm accounting for that. I can then actually start really lowering my rate of fertilizer. So there you go. Hope that helps, and let's move on. All right, there's just a couple more tabs I want to show you on this helpful area calculator tab. This is just a way to better know our areas in our garden. So as you've seen, the nutrient calculator, the pH tab, all require that we input in area in square feet. So if we've got, 5 beds, 15 beds with a certain width and length, this will help us obtain the total areas. So I'll just give you an example. I'll say, my whole garden, it's 15 beds. Each are 3 feet wide. Each are 25 feet long. So now I know that I've got 1,125 feet of space to grow in. So if I was just doing like 2 beds, I could say 2 beds and they're each 3 by 25. So in my case, I'm doing 2 beds of garlic. I know that I'm dealing with 150 square feet. If you had, just one big garden, you wanted to treat it all the same, and it was 25 by 25, you have 625 square feet. There's also a little table below where you can work with like fruit trees, for example. Fruit trees, this just does diameter. So let's say I've got 10 fruit trees and the circle, the diameter of the ring around them that I want to fertilize is 10 feet, for example. Then the total area is 785.5 square feet. And the last tab is the references tab. And this just is the links and citations of the data that I use to develop this tool. So, props to Michigan State data and like Oregon State on the compost, Purdue for the manure and pH tables, and I know I'm missing a lot, but check out this reference sheet and click on those links. Do some digging. I think you'll find even more information than I've given here. So think that is a wrap, and I'm just gonna go back to the start page just to let you know that you can type in your name your location, my SWC demonstration garden, and track and field could potentially be used if this was ever helpful for a nutrient management plan through a USDA program, in which they might require that a track and field number is on the paperwork. So then that carries through to the other tabs. So it just kind of brings it forward. So with that, again, thanks to my SWCD, the USDA NRCS, Clean Water Indiana, and North Central Sayer. I hope this was helpful. Again, this is a January 2026 edition. I hope to continue to improve it. And I want to give a special thanks to you all for coming along for the ride and for your interest in this tool. I hope to see you all again. Peace.